Hello and welcome, friends, lovers, and people who have taken 5 milligrams of Adderall today and then almost fell asleep. I hope that you guys have been up to date with the Blaire White drama. While this video is going to be about Blaire White, it's also not really about her because I'm using her as a vehicle to talk about a larger conversation that I've wanted to have for a while. If people don't know, Blaire White is a trans woman who is conservative. I would say that a lot of people in the queer community would say that you can't be queer and conservative. Which happens to be a viewpoint that I agree with. Blaire White is commonly known for not doing any fucking research on her videos, which, big fat mood, I totally get it. And she also, as a result of that, spreads misinformation. But that's not really why I wanted to talk about her. The reason I wanted to talk about her is because Blaire White is part of this specific type of transphobic trans woman. Yes. So what does that mean? How can you be trans and transphobic? The way that it works is basically the same way that women can still be misogynistic. You know, you can be a thing, but then still hold society's biases at the same time. So that's kind of what's going on. Hey. So I really wanted to add a little bit more information and a little bit more context because as I was editing, realized that it's not as clear as I would have liked. I want to add, to begin, that I will be including as many definitions of terms as is possible. I would like to avoid as much jargon as is possible so that everyone can understand what I'm saying. Also, I will be using the word queer to refer to the entire LGBTQ plus community. Queer is an umbrella term. This should be not surprising, as this is what I usually do in most videos in real life, and it is very common among academic language regarding the LGBTQ plus community. Plus, that's a mouthful, and you guys know I talk slow. And I would like to talk faster, but it's hard, and I'm trying. I also don't think I explained why Blaire was in drama that is relevant to why I'm bringing her up in the first time I filmed this, so here we go. The reason that she has been in some drama lately is because she made false claims regarding the bodybuilder Janae Marie Kroc, who is a trans feminine non-binary person. She is very muscular because she is a bodybuilder. She used to compete and no longer does. She now does a lot of advocacy and educational work. Blaire made false claims that Janae Marie was pre-transition, was competing in men's bodybuilding competitions, then as she was transitioning, was competing with women, and then for whatever reason went back to competing with men. None of that's not true. Because I don't particularly care about what was correct or incorrect about these statements, go and watch D'Angelo's video to get sort of the whole thing, because this video isn't particularly about the drama. The drama is what is the sort of inciting incident inspiration. Her video making these false claims, she, to put it quite frankly, talks shit about Janae Marie and her gender presentation, which is disgusting. How about we don't do that, actually? Let's not. Let's cancel that. End our subscription and say thank you. Don't come back. However, this is not the first time she has made fun of or talked shit about non-binary people, because she and another friend talked shit about non-binary people, saying that non-binary people are not trans.
One of these things is not like the other.
Which one stands out, bitch?
You. Just kidding.
How is someone
take me seriously if this person's going around meeting people and telling them, oh, hi, I'm trans. What are they going to think about us?
That's the biggest thing for me, is that not like, because like, listen, you can call yourself whatever you want. The biggest thing to me is that like this person is paraded around in the media and has a following as a trans person, like, and this person will get picked before you and I for anything. This person will get casted. This person will be able to go and do huge conferences and speak about trans people, and as if they really know. And for me,
as if they've been through anything that we've actually been
through.
Miss Ma'am, the definition of being trans, not identifying with your assigned at birth gender. Yeah, this falls into the very toxic, sort of like true scum kind of like part of the internet. And it is this group of trans people that believe that you have to be a binary trans person in order to be valid in trans. And also, I mean, like, true scum has a lot of like issues with like dysphoria being a requirement, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into that. This video is about Blaire. There's just some common themes there. Blaire's idea of transness is that you want to be cis. Like, you are trying to get from one gender to whatever the like opposite is. And I think for whatever reason, she believes that non-binary identities were a thing that was invented like in the year 2013, which it was not. It has been a thing forever, like forever. And like non-binary people were included in trans literature like beginning at least in the 80s. So a long fucking time at this point. Longer than Blaire's been alive, longer than I've been alive. A long time. There's history to this. To sort of like give an example of another person who is like this, so that you're not just like, oh, you're just like shitting on Blaire. Caitlyn Jenner believes the same things. When she came out, like, she had gone through a ton of like feminization surgeries, like facial feminization, stuff like that, and basically said fairly outright that if you don't go through those surgeries, like, you're not valid in her eyes. There was a lot of backlash against this, obviously, because it's bullshit. So then let's kind of talk about like the opposite of this, like the whole Caitlyn and Blaire live in this world where you have, and honestly Nikita Dragon, exist in this world where you have to pass in the eyes of cis people to truly be trans, which is bullshit and a lie. Like, if you're on the internet, you've probably seen stuff along the lines of saying that you do not have to pass to be valid in your identity. This sort of like external policing of identity is coming from cis-het society, cisgender heterosexual, and is oppressive. It's bad. It's not a thing that we like. Blaire White and Caitlyn Jenner, because very similar, are motivated by the approval of the cis-het gaze. Gaze this way. And this is very, very similar to Michel Foucault's panopticon, which is the whole point of the panopticon is that people will behave a certain way if they are under constant scrutiny. What Foucault's panopticon actually is this circular prison where the prisoners are on the outside and the guards are on the inside, and the guards are constantly able to see all of the prisoners, and so the prisoners know that they are constantly being watched, and the idea is that prisoners will be well behaved because they are aware that they are being watched. There's a lot of similarities between what we know of Blaire's expectations or beliefs of how trans people should be in society to this theory, which is that we should be well behaved, aka pass or try to pass a cis in order to be deemed as valid or be given like the invisible approval of society. Personally, I do not understand this belief or this way of living, and I also find the panopticon to be very ableist, but this is sort of the best way I could find to like explain her perspective and this like gaze. I also want to like add and make it clear that like there's nothing wrong with wanting approval. It's a huge part of human nature. I just think that pushing your hangups around approval along to a influenceable audience, especially people who are likely to be vulnerable in regards to their identity, is really unfair and kind of unacceptable, in my opinion. Her perspective is really harmful and can lead to people who she is influencing to have low self-esteem problems. And when enough people adopt her way of thinking, we've seen throughout history various assimilations that unfortunately end up eliminating diverse and rich cultures. There's nothing wrong with wanting approval. There's nothing wrong with being a binary trans person. There is just something wrong with completely discrediting others' identities because they are not like yours. So really what I wanted to get at with this video was sort of the idea of talking about queer assimilationism versus queer separatism. I want to add here that when I talk about assimilation, this is essentially what is more commonly known as respectability politics, which is the idea or act of behaving in a way that is deemed appropriate or approved by straight society, with the goal being the approval of straight society, which is also sort of a similar theme with Jewish identity. I could probably bring that in, but that is like probably some ideas from it will cross over. But if I were to talk about it through a Jewish lens, that would require another video. For whatever reason, cishet people, and honestly, some trans-binary people are very confused when other trans people don't want to pass as cis. For example, please watch this TikTok that I enjoy very much.
It's not pen. They're tattooed. I felt like, well, my scars were fading and I was like, yucky. I look cis.
Like, here's clearly an example of a person who has been asked by like cishet people like why he doesn't want to pass as cis. Because passing as cis isn't the goal. It's really more of like you want to get away from the parts of yourself that make you feel like ugh and icky and like make your skin crawl and like become this version of yourself that feels like amazing and like surreal and whatever. Like most non-cishet people I know, which is a lot, I don't really know that many cishet people, I feel like I've mentioned that before, would be really fucking embarrassed to be even like thought of as cishet, which then plays into a different sort of like kind of passing. Like, do you pass as queer? Let's say you have long hair and are just wearing normal ass clothes, like a t-shirt, leggings. You could be anything. But because you're not wearing like specifically coded clothing, it is more obvious. It would be more likely for you to be assumed to be straight. So then if you were going to want to pass as queer, you would probably like have very colorful hair. It is more likely that you are queer because fewer cishet people have colored hair. Also, you're more likely to have like very interesting makeup. A lot of the sort of philosophy that I engage in is centered around queer separatism. Separatism is like wanting to just like live in society away from cishet people so that we can live full lives, like to the fullest extent of like being ourselves. And assimilation is obviously adjusting for the approval of larger society. The best example that I have for this is Jews. When we fled Europe and came to the US, a lot of people stopped being Orthodox, which is what led to the creation of conservative reform and Reconstructionist Judaism, and why There's a lot of Jews like myself who do not wear hair coverings and don't wear long skirts all the time because it's much more acceptable in American secular society to, like, you're more likely to, like, have an easier life and be more accepted as a Jewish person if you dress like the rest of Americans. You see what I'm saying? This is kind of a thing that happened with queer culture as well. Like, basically right up through the early 80s, and honestly, I would say to the 90s, queer people lived fully separate lives. Like, there's a reason that the Village is known for being super queer. That was, like, where all the gays lived. Same thing with Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, things of that nature. Because everyone was so fucking homophobic that if you were going to live in cishet society, you are going to have to be one of them. And a lot of people don't want that because then you're, like, limiting yourself. And when people are limited, they're not happy. However, obviously this changed with the AIDS crisis. If you don't know what the AIDS crisis is, I don't know how to help you. But the overview is HIV, AIDS ravaged the queer community, mostly gay men. The reason that the AIDS crisis comes into this is because when tons and tons of gay men were dying, their partners were not legally allowed to visit them in hospitals, because a lot of hospitals had the homophobic practice, the discriminatory practice of requiring you to be family in order to visit your loved one who was sick and dying. And since I guess they were fucking checking papers or some shit, you can just, like, lie and be like, that's my brother. I don't know. Maybe people just don't lie, even though I think everyone should when it's not harmful. A lot of people, therefore, were not able to be with their loved ones as they were dying. Super messed up. This is 99.9% of the reason why we fought for marriage equality, is because if you are with your long-term partner and they get sick and you are not able to be with them when they're dying and you can't have them on your insurance or vice versa, that's a big problem. That's a huge privilege that cishet people were able to have that we were not. There's a long history with, like, queer people being very anti-marriage because it was this huge pillar of straight society. And so, like, there was a philosophy that we are or were better than that and therefore did not need marriage because it's, like, a bind of cishet society. That has drastically gone away. I personally, like, on a lot of points agree with that. I'm not, like, the world's biggest fan of marriage. Will I still probably have a wedding? Yes, I want a party that my parents pay for, that my mom does not force me to make the theme cereal because she thinks old people will not understand Harry Potter. So then, obviously, a lot of countries, basically between the year of, like, 2000 to now, have been legalizing gay marriage. Great, good. Like, even though I'm not super big on marriage, like, it is discriminatory to not allow queer people to marry. I just don't think, like, philosophically that I'm vibing with it, you know what I mean? That totally makes me sound insane. But, I mean, I also know straight people who aren't big fans of marriage. So it's like, I'm kind of on that wavelength. This or that kind of, it's a little bit black and white, yes. And I would say it's unrealistic to be fully assimilationist versus fully separatist. Today, 2020, it is November 5th, 2020, when I'm filming this. This is not really the reality that we are living in, especially with, like, technology creating much more, like relationships with people of different queer viewpoints is much more easily accessible, and I feel like it's harder to, like, run away from home and never interact with cishets again, if that makes sense. People still do it, but I just feel like our world is different than it was. So separatism versus assimilation is a lot less the conversation, although it is coming back now. All of the queer people that I know, myself included, very much would rather not talk to cisheads ever again, like, if possible. Like, it just, it's the same sort of thing where you're in any minority community and you don't have to explain everything because there's so much overlapping common lived experience that it is richer and you can kind of like get deeper and get to these other parts of your life and yourself because there's less explanation involved in existing. I just like feel like we should talk about it more. I don't know, I like love it. This is a topic that Hannah Moskowitz, famous author Hannah Moskowitz, and I talk about a lot on our podcast because it's a big theme of Queer as Folk, which is the show that we are watching right now. We like watch queer media and discuss it. I feel like it's coming back, you know, because there are more opportunities for queer people and more people are willing to admit that they are queer, that it has sort of like allowed for a wider separatist community. And I feel like the reason that all of this drama going on with Blaire White not knowing how to apologize and being transphobic as a trans person, it is disappointing because everything that she is doing is clearly for the approval of cishet people. And it's like, God, just like, why can't you just like be happy vibing with other trans people? Just chill out for a moment. Just like let them live though. Like let them live. And I find it disappointing, quite frankly, for someone of her influence to be allowed to sort of like share such a negative viewpoint that so many queer people don't like and find to be harmful. Like, while I don't think separatism is possible anymore, there are still like pillars of queer separatist communities that are so valuable and crucial that like I would love to have them just like be maintained. Like, I know bathhouses still exist, but like there are almost no lesbian bookstores. There's never really been any lesbian bars because everyone hates us. What I really want is I don't want these things to be relics. I would love for there to be places that are just queer affinity spaces. The lack of solidarity with her own community is disappointing. And if I'm going to be really honest about how I feel, even though I know people don't like when I am that way, I find it disgusting. I really do. She's actively harming her own community by establishing rigid standards for who is and who isn't trans, and also trying to like force transness to be under cishet scrutiny all the time. So much of queer theory and queer philosophy is about like radical acceptance and sometimes even being radically different on purpose, which is kind of where that separatism comes in. I think it's obvious that this is a theory and philosophy that I really appreciate. I find it to be spiritually valuable, not just to myself as an individual, but to the community at large. And yeah, I mean, this video isn't really for Blaire. I do not have any belief that one, that this video will reach her, or two, that I am capable of changing her mind on anything. This is really for people who are watching this unfold and it makes them feel like gross and shit, but they want to get a little bit deeper or want to take, I guess, sort of more of like a wide look at it. Wider and deeper. There is a sex joke in there somewhere. There's a lot of overlap between these philosophies in the queer community and in other minority communities, and it is disappointing to see a lack of real understanding of the community from a trans person of influence. Makes me sad, makes me disappointed. Really, I think what it boils down to, and sort of like the crux of this video, is that radical acceptance and like allowing for radical difference between the queer community and cishet society it's so valuable, and it's being undervalued by like big name trans people, and especially by Blaire White, and her harmful rhetoric and topics that she chooses to cover are not doing anyone any favors. If you have something mean to say, go take it to Blaire's video. I don't want to hear it. But I guess don't harass her. I do not have anything nice to say about Blaire or about her political beliefs, but I did try to keep this as civil as possible. Homeboy does not want a lawsuit. I guess, like, let me know your feelings on separatism versus assimilation. I very much could make a similar video, but it would be much more historical, talking about how Zionism is literally the same idea. It was literally just like Jews in Europe being like, should we become Christian? Or do we die? Or do we move to Israel so that we don't die? Guess what? Made a whole country so that we possibly wouldn't die, and Jews still die there all the time. Nothing happens for us good. I would love to hear about like queer affinity spaces that like give you hope, other trans creators that like make you feel inspired, how you feel about my interpretation of this sort of like dichotomy of philosophy. I know this is not a book video, and it's not really drama either, but I also feel like every time I make a drama video, my IRL friends are like, yes, and everyone on the internet is like, people just don't like my opinions because they're good. People said no good opinions here today. Sorry about it. Obviously, I hate ending videos. I'm very, very bad at being succinct and very bad at concluding things. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't remember what else the other things are that you're supposed to do. Like I said, would love your thoughts. Hopefully you agree with me. Otherwise, I will be sad and annoyed. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
Mamma mia, here I go again. My, how could I resist you? Mamma mia, does it show?